Are you ready to fall asleep with 100 interesting facts from 1990s America? Let's begin. 1. 1991. The rise of grunge. Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit reshaped youth culture. In 1991, a band from Seattle forever altered the sound of American youth culture. Nirvana released Smells Like Teen Spirit, a track that quickly became an anthem for a restless generation. The song wasn't polished in the way that pop hits of the 1980s had been. Instead, it was raw, distorted, and full of the intensity that reflected the mood of young people in the early 1990s. Grunge, with its heavy guitars and introspective lyrics, gave teenagers and young adults a voice that felt authentic. The flannel shirts and casual style of the movement also set fashion trends, moving away from the glam and shine of the previous decade. Seattle became a cultural epicenter, with other bands like Pearl Jam and Soundgarden joining Nirvana in reshaping American music. MTV played the music video endlessly, ensuring that even those far from the Pacific Northwest could feel the energy of this new sound. More than just a song, Smells Like Teen Spirit symbolized a shift in values away from glossy excess and towards something more real, unfiltered, and emotional. It captured the heart of the 1990s youth, who embraced grunge as more than music. It was an identity. 2. 1994. Friends premieres. The sitcom defined a generation of TV. When Friends debuted on NBC in 1994, few could predict it would become one of the most beloved sitcoms of all time. Centered on 6 young adults navigating life in New York City, the show blended humor with heartfelt moments, creating a sense of relatability for audiences across the country. Viewers saw Monica, Chandler, Ross, Rachel, Joey, and Phoebe gather at Central Perk, their fictional coffeehouse hangout, and it felt like a reflection of real-life friendships. The show became a cultural touchstone, sparking catchphrases like, "How you doin'?" and popularizing hairstyles like the Rachel. Beyond style, Friends influenced how people imagined young adult life in the 1990s, urban, social, and full of ups and downs. Thursday nights became appointment television, with millions tuning in to see what misadventures the group would face next. Its success was global, but in America, it embodied the optimism and comedy of the decade. Even in reruns, the show remained timeless, continuing to comfort audiences years later. By the late 1990s, Friends had grown into one of the defining shows of the decade, proving how television could capture the everyday drama of life while offering a warm laugh. 3. 1997. Titanic film release. James Cameron's blockbuster captured hearts worldwide. In December 1997, movie theaters across America filled with audiences eager to experience Titanic. Directed by James Cameron, the film was both a technical achievement and a sweeping love story. Starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, it followed Jack and Rose aboard the doomed ocean liner, blending historical tragedy with romantic drama. The film's visual effects, especially its massive recreation of the ship, set new standards in cinema. The soundtrack, highlighted by Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On, became instantly recognizable and a favorite on radio stations nationwide. Teenagers and young adults went to see it multiple times, sometimes waiting in long lines to secure tickets. For many, it was their first introduction to the real-life story of the Titanic disaster, making history feel both personal and emotional. Titanic eventually became the highest-grossing film of its time, earning over $1 billion worldwide. In America, it became more than entertainment. It was an event, a shared cultural experience that sparked conversations about love, loss, and human ambition. Even today, its legacy endures, reminding viewers of the power of storytelling and the way one film can capture the imagination of an entire generation. 4. 1990. The Simpsons Take Off. America's longest-running animated sitcom hit its stride. Although The Simpsons first appeared as shorts in the late 1980s, by 1990 the show had firmly established itself as a cultural force. Centered on the lives of Homer, Marge, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie, the animated sitcom presented an exaggerated yet oddly relatable version of American family life. Its humor was satirical, poking fun at everything from politics to pop culture, while also highlighting the quirks of everyday living. Bart Simpson's rebellious catchphrases, like "Eat my shorts," became playground staples. Merchandise flooded stores, t-shirts, lunchboxes, and dolls, making the characters household names. What set The Simpsons apart was its ability to balance comedy with insight, showing that animated television could appeal to both adults and children. Critics praised its writing, while audiences tuned in week after week, turning Sunday nights into a tradition. By the mid-1990s, The Simpsons was not only a successful show, but also a mirror of American culture, capturing the humor, struggles, and contradictions of the era. The show's early success in 1990 laid the foundation for its remarkable longevity, making it the longest-running primetime animated series in American history, a title it still holds. 5. 1992. The mall culture peak. Shopping malls as social hubs. In 1992, the American shopping mall wasn't just about buying clothes or grabbing a meal. It was the epicenter of teenage and suburban culture. Malls had become places where friends gathered after school, where families strolled on weekends, and where trends were born. Food courts offered everything from pizza slices to pretzels, while arcades filled with flashing lights and sounds drew kids by the dozen. Clothing retailers like Gap and department stores such as JCPenney and Sears gave shoppers a wide variety of choices under one roof. For many suburban teens, the mall was a first taste of independence, a place to meet friends outside of school and spend allowance money. Movies often portrayed mall life, from comedies to romantic dramas, reinforcing its role in American culture. By 1992, nearly every community had a mall within driving distance, and they symbolized convenience and modern living. While online shopping was still years away from taking hold, malls represented the heart of consumer life. Looking back, the era of mall culture feels like a snapshot of the 1990s, when neon lights, escalators, and bustling crowds made the shopping center more than retail. It was a social scene. Micro-transition. Meanwhile, in the world of technology, 1991, the World Wide Web becomes public. Everyday Americans discover the internet. In 1991, something revolutionary quietly entered American life. The World Wide Web. At first, only universities, scientists, and researchers had access to networks of information. But by the early 1990s, the web became public, and ordinary citizens began to explore its possibilities. Using early browsers, people could view simple pages filled with text and basic images, linked together in a way that seemed almost magical. For the first time, individuals could share knowledge across the globe in seconds. Though slow dial-up connections and screeching modems defined the experience, the novelty was undeniable. Students began using the internet for research, hobbyists created personal pages, and businesses started experimenting with online presence. It wasn't yet the polished world of social media or streaming, but it planted the seeds of what modern life would become. In homes across America, families gathered around bulky desktop computers, amazed at the new frontier of information. The World Wide Web's debut to the public in 1991 was quiet compared to later milestones, but it marked the beginning of a digital revolution that would shape everything from shopping to entertainment in the decades that followed. 7. 1995. Windows 95. Launch. Computers became household essentials. When Microsoft released Windows 95 in August 1995, the personal computer transformed from a niche tool into a household necessity. The launch was unlike anything the tech industry had seen before. Television commercials featuring the Rolling Stones song "Start Me Up" introduced the new Start button, while long lines formed at electronics stores as eager buyers awaited their copy. The operating system offered a user-friendly interface with icons, menus, and multitasking capabilities that made computers more accessible to everyday people. Families began buying PCs for schoolwork, games, and even early internet use. Offices upgraded their systems, ushering in greater productivity and connectivity. Windows 95 also supported features like plug and play, which simplified adding hardware devices, reducing frustration for casual users. More than just software, the release symbolized a cultural moment. Computers were no longer intimidating machines, they were becoming friendly, approachable tools. For many, this was their first time exploring the digital world, opening the door to email, word processing, and web browsing. The 1995 launch of Windows 95 stands as one of the pivotal milestones of the 1990s, setting the stage for computers to become as commonplace as televisions in American households. 8. 1996. DVD format introduced. Movies took on a new form. In 1996, American entertainment entered a new era with the arrival of the DVD, or digital versatile disc. Replacing bulky VHS tapes, DVDs offered sharper picture quality, clearer sound, and convenient features like scene selection. Suddenly, rewinding tapes was a thing of the past. Movie studios quickly embraced the format, releasing popular titles that let audiences enjoy cinema-quality viewing at home. For families, owning DVDs meant building personal movie libraries without worrying about tape wear or tracking problems. The sleek, shiny discs also felt futuristic, a sign of technology's rapid progress during the decade. DVD players became must-have holiday gifts, often paired with blockbuster movies as starter collections. Rental stores like Blockbuster adapted, adding rows of DVDs alongside VHS cassettes, before eventually transitioning to discs entirely. By the late 1990s, DVDs symbolized the excitement of home entertainment's evolution, foreshadowing the even bigger shifts to come with streaming. For movie lovers in 1996, the ability to pop in a disc and enjoy special features like director's commentary made film watching more interactive and immersive. The DVD wasn't just a new format, it was a revolution in how Americans consumed media. 1998. Google founded. A small search engine starts. In 1998, two Stanford University students, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, launched a small internet project that would grow into one of the most influential companies in the world. Their creation, Google, began as a search engine designed to organize the web's rapidly expanding information. At the time, popular search engines like Yahoo and AltaVista were widely used, but Google's PageRank system produced cleaner, more relevant results. Its minimalist homepage, with just a simple logo and a search box, contrasted with the cluttered designs of its competitors. Few could have imagined that this modest startup would transform how people access knowledge. In American homes and schools, searching the internet suddenly became faster, more intuitive, and far more effective. While in 1998 Google was still a small player, its promise was clear to early adopters who marveled at its accuracy. The company would soon expand into email, maps, and countless other services. But in its first year, Google stood out as a quiet innovation that solved a growing problem: finding what you needed in the endless maze of the internet. Its birth in 1998 was a turning point for the digital age. 1999. Napster arrives. Music sharing changes listening habits. By 1999, American music fans discovered a new way to explore their favorite songs. Napster. Created by college student Sean Fanning, Napster was a file-sharing service that allowed users to download and share MP3 files directly with one another. For the first time, music could be obtained instantly from a computer, bypassing traditional record stores. This innovation thrilled young listeners, who suddenly had access to vast libraries of music without spending money. At the same time, it sparked controversy within the music industry, raising questions about copyright and artist compensation. Still, for many teenagers and college students, Napster felt like a musical paradise. Entire generations explored new genres, built custom playlists, and burned CDs to share with friends. The software's impact on American culture was immediate. It shifted how people thought about owning music. Instead of waiting for albums to release or singles to air on the radio, listeners could find songs on demand. Though Napster's legal battles eventually led to its shutdown, its 1999 debut marked the beginning of a new digital era. It paved the way for streaming services, changing not only habits but the very definition of how music is consumed. At the same time, sports were thrilling fans. 1990s America. A cultural, political, and technological journey. The 1990s stand out as a decade of contrasts, grunge and glam, new technologies and old traditions, optimism and unease. It was a time when America experienced an explosion of youth culture, the rise of new political debates, and groundbreaking scientific milestones. From flannel shirts and Doc Martens to the Clinton presidency, from PlayStation consoles to the Mars Pathfinder, the 1990s stitched together a patchwork of moments that shaped a generation and pointed toward the new millennium. Fashion, identity, and youth culture. 11. 1990s, flannel shirts, and Doc Martens. The decade began with a look that was as much a rejection of polished 1980s glamour as it was a style statement of its own. Grunge fashion, flannel shirts, oversized and thrifted, became symbols of authenticity. Worn with Doc Martens boots, ripped jeans, and a casual, almost disheveled aesthetic, this style reflected the ethos of bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam. It was a uniform of rebellion, a way for young people to express detachment from mainstream consumer culture. Yet ironically, it became a consumer trend itself, quickly adopted by department stores and fashion magazines. 12. 1996. Tommy Hilfiger's rise. By the mid-1990s, fashion had taken another turn. Tommy Hilfiger rose from niche designer to household name, fueled by endorsements from hip-hop stars and runway dominance. The brand's bold red, white and blue logos, oversized jackets, and baggy jeans became the look of aspirational youth. Teenagers and college students proudly wore Hilfiger's designs, merging casual streetwear with luxury branding. His popularity symbolized the blending of subcultures hip-hop, skate, and prep into a broader mainstream style. 13. 1990s hip-hop fashion influence. Hip-hop itself drove much of 1990s fashion. Baggy jeans, oversized hoodies, baseball caps worn backwards, and Timberland boots became as iconic as the music that inspired them. Brands like Fubu, Cross Colors, and Karl Kani grew in prominence, explicitly celebrating black culture and identity. For many young people, fashion was more than clothing. It was self-definition, a way to project confidence and cultural pride. 14. 1990s rollerblading craze. Beyond fashion, the decade also saw lifestyle fads sweep across communities. Rollerblading became one of the most visible trends of the early and mid-1990s. Parks and suburban streets filled with kids and teens in inline skates, practicing tricks, or simply cruising with friends. Extreme sports competitions featured daredevil stunts on ramps, bringing rollerblading into televised events. While the craze eventually cooled, for much of the decade, it was synonymous with youthful freedom and suburban recreation. 15. 1997. Abercrombie & Fitch peak popularity. By the late 1990s, Abercrombie & Fitch redefined teen fashion. Its marketing leaned heavily on exclusivity, dimly lit stores with loud music, expensive casual wear, and advertising campaigns that projected an image of idealized youth. With its logo-heavy t-shirts, cargo pants, and signature fragrances, Abercrombie captured the desire for status-driven fashion. Though often critiqued for its narrow vision of beauty, it undeniably marked a peak in branded lifestyle clothing at the decade's end. Gaming and entertainment. 16. 1991. Super Nintendo lands in the U.S. The gaming industry transformed in the 1990s. The Super Nintendo Entertainment System, SNES, released in 1991, delivered 16-bit graphics, smoother gameplay, and legendary titles such as Super Mario World and The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. For kids growing up in the early 1990s, the SNES wasn't just a console, it was a doorway into new imaginative worlds. 17. 1994. PlayStation debut. The industry shifted again in 1994 with Sony's PlayStation. Unlike Nintendo's family-friendly branding, PlayStation targeted teenagers and young adults with edgier graphics and immersive storytelling. Titles like Final Fantasy VII, Metal Gear Solid, and Gran Turismo set new standards for narrative depth and realism in games. The PlayStation's arrival cemented gaming as not just a pastime for children but a cultural force across generations. 18. 1996. Pokémon introduced to America. In 1996, another gaming revolution arrived, Pokémon Day. What began as a Game Boy title quickly spread into trading cards, an animated series, and a merchandising empire. Children across America memorized Pokémon names, traded cards on playgrounds, and tuned in to follow Ash and Pikachu's adventures. Pokémon's arrival was more than a craze. It was a global phenomenon that connected kids across cultures and continues to endure today. 1993. Doom sparks gaming debate. Not all gaming milestones were celebrated equally. In 1993, Doom sparked national debates over video game violence. Its pixelated demons, dark themes, and first-person shooter mechanics raised concerns among parents, politicians, and educators. Hearings in Washington questioned whether violent games were influencing youth behavior. These debates eventually led to the creation of the Entertainment Software Rating Board, ESRB, which standardized age ratings for video games, a system still in use today. 1998. Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Release. The decade closed with one of gaming's greatest achievements, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time in 1998. Hailed for its expansive three-dimensional world, compelling story, and groundbreaking mechanics, the game set benchmarks for what video games could achieve as art and adventure. Players were not just spectators, but heroes shaping the story, and the game is still considered one of the most influential titles ever made. Politics and national events. On the political stage, 1991. Gulf War coverage on CNN. The 1990s opened with the Gulf War, and for many Americans, it was experienced not through newspapers, but live on CNN. The network broadcast real-time updates from Baghdad, introducing the world to 24-hour news coverage. This changed how Americans consumed information, making television not just a source but the stage of global conflict. 1993. Bill Clinton's inauguration. In 1993, Bill Clinton was inaugurated as the 42nd president. Young, charismatic, and tech-friendly, Clinton represented generational change after the Reagan-Bush years. His presidency embodied both optimism through economic growth and technological innovation and controversy, as scandals would later dominate headlines. His inaugural moment, however, captured a hopeful vision of renewal for the 1990s. 1995. Oklahoma City bombing. The decade was not without tragedy. In 1995, the Oklahoma City bombing shocked the nation. The attack, carried out against a federal building, killed 168 people and injured hundreds. It remains one of the deadliest acts of domestic terrorism in U.S. history. Americans mourned together, while investigators and lawmakers grappled with how to respond to domestic extremism. 1998. Clinton impeachment proceedings. By the late 1990s, Clinton's administration was embroiled in scandal. In 1998, the House of Representatives began impeachment proceedings against him over charges of perjury and obstruction of justice. Though the Senate acquitted him, the episode revealed deep partisan divides and raised questions about the role of morality and law in political leadership. 1999 Y2K concerns across America. As the millennium approached, Americans grew anxious about Y2K, the millennium bug. Experts warned that computers, programmed to read years with 2 digits, might malfunction when 1999 turned to 2000. Would planes fall from the sky? Would banks collapse? Businesses spent billions updating systems, while ordinary people stockpiled supplies. When midnight struck, the world largely continued without disruption, but the episode illustrated growing dependence on digital infrastructure. Science and technology. 1993. Hubble telescope repairs improve clarity. The 1990s also pushed the frontiers of science. In 1993, astronauts repaired the Hubble Space Telescope, correcting a flaw in its mirror. Suddenly, humanity had breathtaking, crystal-clear views of the universe, images of distant galaxies, nebulae, and star formations that captured the imagination of millions. Hubble's success symbolized humanity's quest for knowledge and reminded Americans of their place in the cosmos. 1996. Dolly the sheep inspires American debates. In 1996, scientists announced the successful cloning of Dolly the sheep in Scotland. The news traveled quickly to America, sparking ethical debates about the future of genetics, cloning, and biotechnology. Was cloning a tool for medical progress, or a step too far into playing God? For many Americans, Dolly's existence made abstract questions of science immediate and urgent. 1998. International Space Station beginnings. In 1998, construction began on the International Space Station, ISS, a collaboration among the US, Russia, and other nations. It marked a new era of global cooperation in space, moving beyond Cold War competition. For Americans, it was a proud moment of scientific achievement and a symbol of hope for peaceful exploration. 1997. Mars Pathfinder rover lands. The year before, in 1997, NASA's Mars Pathfinder landed successfully, deploying the Sojourner rover. For the first time, Americans watched images of a robot exploring another planet's surface. The mission captured national excitement and showed how far technology had come since the moon landing. It also reignited dreams of future human missions to Mars. 1990s. Advances in cell phones. Closer to home, everyday technology changed rapidly. cell phones evolved from bulky bricks into sleeker, more portable devices. While still expensive, they became symbols of status and convenience. By the late 1990s, more Americans carried them, paving the way for the mobile revolution of the 2000s. These devices hinted at a future where communication would be instantaneous and global. Music and cultural expression. 31. 1990s music scene overview. The 1990s were defined as much by sound as by sight. Grunge bands like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and Soundgarden gave voice to disillusioned youth. Hip-hop artists like Tupac Shakur, the Notorious B.I.G., and later Jay-Z, shaped not just music but broader cultural conversations. Pop stars like Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys fueled teen obsessions, while R&B acts like TLC and Destiny's Child dominated the charts. Each genre spoke to different audiences, but collectively, they formed a soundtrack that remains instantly recognizable today. Music videos on MTV carried these sounds into living rooms nationwide, making fashion, slang, and attitude inseparable from the songs themselves. Festivals like Lollapalooza gave alternative rock a stage, while hip-hop spread from urban roots to mainstream America. The 1990s music scene was eclectic, diverse, and unifying, an era when mixtapes and CD towers held the emotional maps of adolescence. 32. 1990s cultural transformation summary. The 1990s were a decade of transformation. Fashion swung from grunge authenticity to logo-heavy branding. Games evolved from 16-bit fun to immersive three-dimensional worlds. Politics saw moments of unity and deep division. Science stretched boundaries from cloning to space exploration, while technology crept into daily life with cell phones and digital networks. Music, as always, tied it all together, providing the rhythm to a society in flux. As the clock ticked toward the year 2000, Americans carried with them both excitement and uncertainty. The Y2K scare highlighted just how much life now depended on computers, while new cultural icons pointed toward a digital, globalized future. Looking back, the 1990s were not just a bridge between centuries, but a laboratory of ideas, fashions, and technologies that continue to shape life today. The 1990s. Music, movies, youth culture, and classrooms. The 1990s were a decade of transformation, creativity, and cultural milestones that continue to echo today. From the rise of alternative rock and hip-hop to the dominance of Disney films, from Tamagotchis in backpacks to computers in classrooms, the 1990s offered a rich tapestry of change. This was a decade where old traditions met new technologies, where analog gave way to digital, and where pop culture exploded into phenomena that still resonate in nostalgia-driven conversations. Music in the 1990s. A shifting soundtrack. 33. 1991. MTV Unplugged Sessions. In 1991, MTV Unplugged emerged as one of the most influential stages for musicians. It was a show that stripped away heavy production and amplified raw talent. Artists who had been known for electric guitars, studio effects, and high production value were suddenly asked to showcase their songs in an acoustic setting. The intimacy of these performances revealed the artistry behind the spectacle. Perhaps most iconic was Nirvana's 1993 Unplugged in New York session, recorded shortly before Kurt Cobain's death. Their stripped-down versions of grunge anthems like Come As You Are and haunting covers like The Man Who Sold the World became symbols of vulnerability and artistry. But it wasn't just Nirvana. Eric Clapton's 1992 session, featuring Tears in Heaven, moved audiences deeply. Mariah Carey, Pearl Jam, and Lauryn Hill all used the format to create career-defining moments. MTV Unplugged demonstrated that in an era increasingly defined by spectacle, simplicity still held power. It became a metaphor for the 1990s itself, a time when authenticity was just as important as performance. 34. 1992. Dr. Dre's The Chronic. The year 1992 changed hip-hop forever, with Dr. Dre's release of The Chronic. This album not only launched Dre's solo career but also introduced the world to a new sound, G-Funk. Borrowing from funk grooves, smooth bass lines, and laid-back beats, Dre created a sound that dominated West Coast rap. The Chronic also introduced Snoop Doggy Dogg, whose smooth delivery and charisma made him an instant star. Tracks like New Thin But a G-Thang became anthems, and the album's unapologetic portrayal of urban life sparked debates about censorship and representation. For many, it was a raw reflection of life in Los Angeles, complete with references to gang culture, police tensions, and survival. Hip-hop, once seen as a fringe genre, became mainstream in the 1990s. By the end of the decade, it was one of the most influential cultural forces, shaping not only music but also fashion, language, and youth identity. 35. 1995. Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill. If Dr. Dre gave voice to the West Coast, Alanis Morissette gave voice to an entirely different audience in 1995. Her album, Jagged Little Pill, was raw, confessional, and unapologetically emotional. Songs like You Oughta Know and Ironic resonated with listeners who were looking for honesty and complexity in pop rock music. The album sold over 30 million copies worldwide, making Morissette one of the biggest artists of the decade. But beyond the numbers, it reflected a shift in music toward vulnerability. Female artists like Sheryl Crow, Tori Amos, and Fiona Apple were also challenging the male-dominated rock scene, bringing new perspectives into the mainstream. 36. 1998. Britney Spears' debut single. By 1998, a new wave of pop was ready to take over the charts. Britney Spears burst onto the scene with Baby One More Time, a single that instantly became a cultural phenomenon. The schoolgirl outfit, the infectious beat, and the mix of innocence with teenage rebellion defined late 90s pop. Spears wasn't just a singer, she became a symbol of youth culture. Alongside Christina Aguilera, Jessica Simpson, and Mandy Moore, she spearheaded a new teen pop explosion. For younger audiences, Britney was a relatable star. For the music industry, she represented a marketing powerhouse. 37. 1999. Backstreet Boys and NSYNC peak. If Britney was the queen of late 90s pop, the boy bands were its kings. By 1999, groups like Backstreet Boys and NSYNC were filling stadiums and topping charts. The Backstreet Boys album Millennium sold over 1 million copies in its first week, while NSYNC's choreographed performances and harmonized ballads made them idols. The boy band craze wasn't just about music, it was about fandom. Posters filled bedroom walls, fan clubs grew, and TRL, Total Request Live on MTV, became the daily countdown ritual for millions of teenagers. This peak of pop culture marked the close of the decade, setting the stage for the 2000s. Movies and TV. Storytelling evolves. 38. 1991. Disney's Beauty and the Beast. The early 90s saw Disney's animation renaissance, and 1991's Beauty and the Beast was at its heart. It became the first animated film nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards, showing that animation could be more than children's entertainment. Its storytelling, music by Alan Menken, and timeless message of love and acceptance made it a classic. 39. 1993. Jurassic Park special effects. Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park changed cinema forever in 1993. Its groundbreaking use of CGI dinosaurs alongside practical effects created a sense of realism that stunned audiences. The T-Rex scene, with its terrifying roar and trembling water glass, became an iconic cinematic moment. Beyond spectacle, Jurassic Park showed the potential of digital effects. Hollywood realized that entire worlds could be built through technology, leading to new genres and possibilities. 40. 1994. The Lion King phenomenon. In 1994, Disney delivered another cultural juggernaut, The Lion King. Its sweeping African landscapes, memorable characters like Simba and Scar, and Elton John's unforgettable soundtrack made it a global success. The film grossed nearly $1 billion and inspired Broadway musicals, sequels, and endless merchandise. For many children of the 1990s, The Lion King wasn't just a movie. It was an emotional experience about loss, identity, and courage. 41. 1999. The Matrix introduces bullet time. By the end of the decade, another innovation reshaped cinema. The Matrix, 1999, stunned audiences with its philosophical storylines and pioneering special effects. The bullet time sequences, where action slowed while the camera spun around, redefined how action movies could look. Its cyberpunk aesthetic, leather coats, and green code became part of late 90s culture. The film also tapped into anxieties about technology, reality, and freedom issues that would only grow more relevant in the 2000s. 42. The 1990s rise of reality TV. While movies pushed boundaries, television found a new formula: reality TV. Shows like The Real World, 1992, and Survivor, 1999, introduced unscripted drama, competition, and voyeurism. For audiences, it was addictive. For networks, it was cheap to produce. By the end of the decade, reality TV was firmly planted as a television staple, foreshadowing its dominance in the 2000s. Youth and Toys, Playtime Redefined, 43. 1993. Power Rangers debut. For kids, few shows were bigger than Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Debuting in 1993, it combined American teen drama with Japanese action footage. Every afternoon, children tuned in to watch colorful heroes battle monsters. Merchandise flew off shelves, action figures, costumes, lunchboxes. Power Rangers wasn't just a TV show, it was a lifestyle. 44. 1996. Tamagotchi craze. By 1996, playgrounds buzzed with beeping toys. Tamagotchis, these virtual pets demanded constant feeding, cleaning, and attention. Teachers often banned them from classrooms, as students snuck peeks to ensure their pixelated pets survived. The Tamagotchi craze was one of the first signs that digital toys could create global obsessions. 45. 1990s Nickelodeon slime shows. Nickelodeon defined 90s children's television with its slime. Shows like Double Dare and Figure It Out featured messy challenges, where green goo poured from above. Getting slimed became a badge of honor, turning messy fun into a cultural symbol of the network. 46. 1998. Furbies take over Christmas. In 1998, Furbies became the must-have holiday toy. These furry, owl-like creatures spoke a strange language, learned English over time, and blinked with robotic eyes. Parents endured long lines and shortages, while kids marveled at their interactive pets. 47. 1999. Pokémon cards trade craze. By 1999, Pokémon had arrived in full force. While the video games and TV show were popular, it was the trading card game that captured schools. Kids battled with decks, traded holographic Charizards, and turned recess into a marketplace. Pokémon wasn't just a toy, it was a universe. It combined television, video games, toys, and cards into a multimedia empire that defined late 90s childhood. Education and society, classrooms of change, micro-transition in schools and classrooms. 48. 1990s surge in computer labs. By the 1990s, schools began integrating technology in unprecedented ways. Computer labs appeared across districts, filled with clunky desktops running MS-DOS or early versions of Windows. Programs like Oregon Trail and Typing Tutor introduced students to digital literacy. Computers weren't just a novelty, they were seen as essential tools for the future workforce. The rise of these labs marked the beginning of a digital shift in education. 49. 1994. Internet research projects in schools. By 1994, the internet began entering classrooms. Teachers assigned projects that encouraged students to explore online databases and emerging websites. Although connections were slow and search engines primitive, students marveled at accessing information beyond textbooks. The internet gave education a global reach. Suddenly, students in small towns could access resources from universities, museums, and libraries worldwide. 50. 1996. Standardized testing growth. The mid-90s also saw a rise in standardized testing. Schools began placing greater emphasis on measurable results, with exams determining funding, rankings, and student progress. While some praised accountability, others criticized the pressure it placed on students and teachers. 51. 1990s school lunch programs. Beyond academics, schools also experimented with improved lunch programs. Efforts to provide balanced meals coexisted with the growing influence of fast food. Pizza days and vending machine sodas became part of school culture, sparking debates about nutrition. 52. 1998. Debate over school uniforms. By 1998, debates over school uniforms intensified. Supporters argued that uniforms reduced bullying and promoted equality, while opponents claimed they suppressed individuality. Districts across the U.S. experimented with policies, making uniforms a frequent topic of parent-teacher meetings. 53. The 1990s as a decade of transformation. Looking back, the 1990s were far more than just a bridge between the analog 80s and the digital 2000s. They were a decade of experimentation, cultural breakthroughs, and new ways of thinking. Music ranged from unplugged acoustic sessions to polished pop anthems. Movies pushed visual boundaries while television redefined entertainment. Children's toys became global crazes, while classrooms began embracing the digital revolution. The decade ended with both nostalgia and anticipation. As 1999 faded into 2000, the world stood on the brink of a new millennium, uncertain, excited, and forever shaped by the cultural tapestry of the 1990s. Travel and transportation in the 1990s. 54. 1990s frequent flyer miles programs. By the early 1990s, airlines had begun to transform loyal customers into dedicated brand followers through frequent flyer mile programs. Although these programs had roots in the late 1980s, the 1990s solidified their cultural impact. Travelers began to see flights not simply as a way to move from one city to another, but as part of a long-term accumulation strategy. Suddenly, business trips became opportunities for building mileage accounts that could lead to discounted vacations or even first-class upgrades. The psychology of travel shifted. People started choosing airlines not for the cheapest ticket, but for the potential long-term rewards. Credit card companies quickly partnered with airlines, offering co-branded cards that allowed consumers to earn miles with every purchase. By the mid-1990s, dinner at a restaurant or shopping for groceries could indirectly finance a future trip to Europe. The system reinforced a loyalty loop that shaped consumer behavior well beyond the travel industry. 55. 1994. The Channel Tunnel connects travel ideas. In 1994, an engineering marvel forever altered the geography of European travel. The Channel Tunnel, often nicknamed the Chunnel, stretching over 31 miles beneath the English Channel, it connected Folkestone in the United Kingdom with Coquelles in France. The Channel represented more than an easier way to move between London and Paris. It symbolized a world becoming smaller, more connected, and more ambitious in its infrastructure projects. It drastically shortened travel time, allowing high-speed trains to transport passengers under the sea in a matter of hours. Tourism surged, businesses expanded across borders, and the dream of a united European market became physically tangible. The Channel was also a cultural statement, where centuries of political rivalry and geographic separation had divided Britain and France. Technology now bridged the gap. In the context of the 1990s, when globalization was accelerating, the Channel embodied the idea that travel should be seamless and international. 56. 1997. SUVs rise in popularity. Back in the United States, a different kind of travel trend emerged in the mid-1990s. The rise of the sport utility vehicle, SUV. Although SUVs had existed for decades in forms like the Jeep Cherokee and Ford Bronco, 1997 marked a turning point. Families across America flocked to dealerships to buy vehicles that combined rugged capability with suburban practicality. The Toyota RAV4 and Honda CR-V, compact yet versatile SUVs, broadened the market. Larger models like the Ford Explorer became the quintessential symbol of family road trips, soccer practice drop-offs, and the new suburban ideal. Owning an SUV suggested not only status but also readiness for adventure. This trend dovetailed with rising affluence in the late 1990s, suburban expansion, and a marketing narrative that sold SUVs as the ultimate lifestyle vehicle. By the end of the decade, the SUV was no longer niche. It was a defining automobile of the era. 57. 1999. Airline deregulation effects continue. The effects of airline deregulation, which began in the late 1970s, continued to reverberate into the 1990s. By 1999, competition had reshaped the airline industry, driving down fares and expanding service to smaller cities. Yet these changes brought mixed results. On one hand, more Americans than ever before could afford to fly. Weekend getaways to major hubs became common, and budget-conscious travelers benefited from a market that encouraged fare wars. On the other hand, airlines faced thin profit margins, and customer service often suffered. Cancellations, delays, and overbooking incidents frustrated passengers, foreshadowing issues that would plague 21st-century air travel. The cultural takeaway was clear. Flying was no longer an elite activity reserved for the wealthy. Instead, it became an everyday, sometimes frustrating, part of modern life, accessible, but no longer glamorous. 58. 1990s road trip culture with CD players. Even as air travel grew, the American road trip retained its nostalgic power. The 1990s added a new soundtrack to the open road. CD players. Gone were the days of rewinding cassettes. Instead, travelers could slip in shiny discs, loaded with favorite albums or carefully curated mixes. Families packed minivans and SUVs with snacks, maps, and portable CD cases, heading out to national parks, beaches, or amusement parks. Popular albums, whether it was Nirvana's Nevermind, Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill, or the Backstreet Boys' latest hit, became tied to memories of highways, gas stations, and endless horizons. The ritual of the 1990s road trip was both old-fashioned and modern, an enduring American pastime enhanced by the technology of the era. Food and drink. The 1990s consumer palate. 59. 1991. Crystal Pepsi launch. The 1990s began with one of the boldest beverage experiments of the decade, Crystal Pepsi. Launched in 1991, it offered a caffeine-free, clear cola that promised purity and innovation. For a moment, it seemed futuristic soda stripped of artificial coloring, marketed as a healthier alternative without losing the familiar cola taste. Though the drink was short-lived, Crystal Pepsi remains a cultural symbol of 1990s experimentation. Its flashy commercials and novelty appeal captured the decade's willingness to try something radically new, even if it didn't last. 60. 1995. Starbucks expands rapidly. By the mid-1990s, a small coffee company from Seattle became a global powerhouse. Starbucks transformed coffee from a morning ritual into a cultural experience. By 1995, Starbucks was rapidly expanding across the US and preparing to extend overseas. The company sold more than beverages, it sold an identity. Ordering a cappuccino or latte became a lifestyle statement, tied to notions of urban sophistication and productivity. Coffee shops shifted from quiet corners into bustling third places, somewhere between work and home, where people lingered with laptops, books, and conversations. Starbucks changed not just the coffee industry, but urban culture itself, embedding the cafe into the rhythm of everyday life. 61. 1997. Lunchables popular in schools. If Starbucks catered to adults, children of the 1990s found delight in Lunchables. By 1997, these pre-packaged trays of crackers, cheese, pizza ingredients, or deli slices had become staples in school cafeterias. Lunchables reflected the decade's broader embrace of convenience. Busy parents appreciated the ease, while kids loved the autonomy of assembling their own meals. Though often criticized for being processed and less nutritious, Lunchables symbolized the power of branding and packaging in shaping childhood food culture. 62. 1990s rise of bottled water. Another trend bubbling up in the 1990s was the rise of bottled water. Once considered unnecessary in countries with safe tap water, bottled water brands like Evian, Dasani, and Aquafina gained traction as symbols of health and modernity. Fitness culture, environmental awareness, and savvy marketing converged to convince consumers that hydration was not only essential but stylish. Carrying a bottle of branded water became both a health-conscious choice and a cultural marker, whether at the gym, the office, or in a backpack for class. 63. 1998. Red Bull arrives in America. In 1998, a new drink landed on US shelves. Red Bull. Imported from Austria, it promised to give you wings, and it quickly became the cornerstone of the energy drink industry. Initially targeting college students, club-goers, and young professionals, Red Bull marketed itself as both a performance enhancer and a lifestyle accessory. Its sleek silver and blue can became a fixture at late-night study sessions and dance floors. By the end of the decade, it had not only created a new beverage category but also redefined how people approached energy and productivity. Micro-transition. Back to popular culture. Food and drink shaped routines and identities, but the 1990s cultural explosion was most visible on screens, televisions that delivered groundbreaking shows, and a new wave of animation. Television and broadcasting. 64. 1990 Twin Peaks premieres. In 1990, television audiences encountered something radically different. Twin Peaks, created by David Lynch and Mark Frost. Surreal, unsettling, and unlike any drama before it, the series blended soap opera tropes with dreamlike horror. Though its run was short, Twin Peaks opened the door for television to be artistic, experimental, and cinematic. It helped redefine TV not just as entertainment, but as a medium for complex storytelling that could rival film. 65. 1992. Cartoon Network launches. The early 1990s were also the golden age of animation. accelerated by the launch of Cartoon Network in 1992. Unlike other channels that mixed cartoons with live programming, Cartoon Network dedicated itself exclusively to animation. This focus gave rise to both reruns of classics like Looney Tunes and original programming that would flourish later in the decade. For kids, Cartoon Network became a cultural touchstone, the default channel for after-school or weekend viewing. 66. 1994. ER dominates ratings. By 1994, ER, a medical drama created by Michael Crichton, became one of the most watched shows on television. Its fast-paced storytelling, emotional depth, and strong ensemble cast featuring George Clooney captured audiences worldwide. More than just entertainment, ER shaped perceptions of the medical profession, humanizing doctors and nurses while dramatizing the chaos of emergency rooms. It also established NBC's dominance in primetime programming, making Thursday nights must-see TV. 67. 1997. South Park begins. If ER captured mainstream drama, South Park, which premiered in 1997, represented irreverence and shock. Its crude animation belied sharp satire that skewered politics, culture, and taboo subjects. Created by Trey Parker and Matt Stone, South Park tested the boundaries of cable television, often sparking controversy while attracting a fiercely loyal fan base. It reflected a broader 1990s trend, the growing appetite for edgy, boundary-pushing content. 68. 1999. SpongeBob SquarePants debut. As the decade closed, another animated icon emerged, SpongeBob SquarePants. Premiering on Nickelodeon in 1999, the series introduced a whimsical undersea world filled with humor that appealed to children and adults alike. SpongeBob became a cultural juggernaut, embodying the late 1990s embrace of quirky, optimistic characters. Where South Park pushed boundaries, SpongeBob spread joy together, showing the vast range of what television could offer. Everyday gadgets of the 1990s. 69. 1990s. Pagers and beepers. Before smartphones and constant connectivity, the 1990s had pagers and beepers. Small, clipped onto belts or tucked into pockets, they became symbols of availability. Doctors, business people, and teenagers alike carried them, waiting for the buzz that meant someone needed them. Though limited in function, often just numeric messages, they represented the first step toward the always-connected culture of the future. 70. 1992. First text messages sent. In 1992, history was made with the first text message, a simple Merry Christmas sent over a cellular network. While few could have predicted the cultural revolution it would spark, texting slowly began to emerge as a faster, more discreet form of communication than phone calls. By the late 1990s, teens especially adopted the practice, using shorthand and acronyms that would shape digital communication for decades. 71. 1996. Palm Pilot handheld organizers. As business went digital, so did organization. In 1996, the Palm Pilot handheld organizer launched, offering calendar functions, note-taking, and contact management. Compact and practical, it became the must-have gadget for professionals juggling busy schedules. Though primitive by today's standards, the Palm Pilot foreshadowed the smartphone era, bridging the gap between paper planners and digital convenience. 72. 1998. Portable CD players peak. Music defined the 1990s, and by 1998 the portable CD player was at its peak. Whether it was a Sony Discman or another brand, these devices allowed people to take their favorite albums anywhere. The drawback, of course, was skipping a problem whenever the device was jostled. Yet despite the inconvenience, the CD player represented freedom, mobility, and personal soundtracks to daily life. For many, it was the essential companion on bus rides, plane trips, and walks. 73. 1999. BlackBerry devices begin. As the decade ended, a new player emerged. The BlackBerry. In 1999, the first devices offered mobile email access, forever changing business communication. Nicknamed the Crackberry for its addictive qualities, the BlackBerry became synonymous with productivity and constant connectivity. It set the stage for the smartphone revolution of the 2000s, making 1999 a watershed moment in digital communication. 74. 1990s technology summary. The 1990s were not just a bridge between the analog and digital eras. They were a fertile, experimental decade that reshaped how people traveled, ate, watched television, and communicated. From frequent flyer miles to bottled water, from South Park to SpongeBob, and from pagers to BlackBerry devices, the era laid the groundwork for 21st century culture. What ties these seemingly disparate threads together is a sense of expansion, whether in global travel, consumer convenience, entertainment variety, or technological connectivity. The 1990s were an age of stretching boundaries, testing possibilities, and preparing for the digital millennium to come. The 1990s, environment, identity, nostalgia, and the countdown to a new millennium. The 1990s were a decade of transition, a bridge between the analog rhythms of the 20th century and the digital speed of the 21st. The years were filled with cultural debates, environmental movements, new technologies, and a growing awareness of America's changing identity. In the span of just 10 years, people saw the spread of cell phones, the rise of the internet, the expansion of multiculturalism in mainstream media, and the persistent tug-of-war between leisure and responsibility. Environmental awareness in the 1990s. 75. 1990. Earth Day celebrated widely. The decade opened with a renewed commitment to the environment. On April 22, 1990, Earth Day was celebrated across the United States with a scale and intensity not seen since its original observance in 1970. Schools organized cleanups, cities hosted environmental fairs, and media outlets devoted airtime to ecological issues. The 1990 Earth Day wasn't simply a commemoration. It was a declaration that environmental responsibility had entered mainstream American consciousness. Children painted recycling symbols on their posters, and families discussed energy conservation at the dinner table. Environmentalism was no longer limited to fringe activists. It was part of ordinary life. 76. 1992. Recycling programs expand. By the early 1990s, curbside recycling programs were growing rapidly. Cities began rolling out colored bins for glass, plastic, and paper, and municipal governments invested in new recycling facilities. For many Americans, separating recyclables from trash became as routine as brushing teeth. Companies adjusted as well. Cereal boxes and soda cans prominently displayed recycling symbols, while public service announcements reminded viewers that every can counts. This expansion reflected both grassroots enthusiasm and governmental support, showing that environmentalism had practical pathways into daily habits. 77. 1995. Endangered species awareness campaigns. By the mid-decade, environmental awareness had shifted toward biodiversity. Campaigns to protect endangered species became highly visible, with charismatic animals like the bald eagle, sea turtles, and pandas serving as symbols for larger ecological struggles. Zoos worked to raise awareness. Classrooms hosted Save the Whales projects, and documentaries on cable TV brought attention to vanishing habitats. Importantly, this focus tied global responsibility to individual action, adopting a manatee through donation programs, refusing to buy products linked to deforestation, or choosing cruelty-free cosmetics. Children of the 1990s often grew up with posters of rainforest animals and understood that protecting wildlife was tied to protecting the planet. 78. 1990s debate over global warming. Alongside recycling and endangered species campaigns, the decade also witnessed a contentious debate: global warming. Though scientists had been warning about greenhouse gases for years, the 1990s brought the issue into broader public consciousness. Media reports described rising temperatures, melting glaciers, and unpredictable weather patterns. Yet, controversy persisted. Industry groups downplayed the severity, while environmental organizations sounded alarms. Everyday people heard the phrase carbon footprint for the first time. Politically, the US wrestled with its role in global agreements like the Kyoto Protocol. For many Americans, the 1990s were the decade when climate change shifted from scientific abstraction to dinner-table conversation. 79. 1999. Hybrid cars introduced. As the decade closed, solutions began appearing in the form of new technology. In 1999, hybrid cars such as the Toyota Prius were introduced to the US market. Though initially seen as niche vehicles for eco-conscious drivers, hybrids signaled the possibility of reimagining transportation. They represented a blending of environmental awareness with innovation, foreshadowing the green technology boom of the 2000s. In advertisements, hybrids weren't just marketed as fuel-efficient, They were symbols of responsibility and forward thinking. The arrival of hybrid cars tied together the decade's themes, from Earth Day to climate change debates. The 1990s had laid the groundwork for a future in which environmentalism and technology would be inseparable. American identity and culture. 1990s rise of multicultural media representation. Cultural identity in the 1990s became increasingly defined by diversity. Television shows like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, In Living Color, and Moesha offered platforms for black actors and writers, while films like Joy Luck Club highlighted Asian American stories. Latino culture found greater visibility through telenovelas and crossover stars. This rise of multicultural representation reflected America's evolving demographic reality. It was no longer unusual to see diverse casts in mainstream media, and audiences were hungry for stories that reflected their own experiences. Pop culture became both a mirror and a mold for how America understood itself as a multicultural nation. 1992, LA Olympics legacy in cities. The legacy of the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics continued into the early 1990s, influencing urban planning and community development. Cities looked to LA's example of repurposing facilities, attracting tourism, and showcasing local culture. The Olympic Games were remembered not just for athletic triumphs, but for their ability to unite diverse populations under a common banner. In Los Angeles itself, the Games left behind infrastructure that continued to serve communities, stadiums, transportation improvements, and a spirit of civic pride. Throughout the 1990s, other cities aspired to capture similar legacies, blending sports with identity. 1995, growth of Latino music in U.S. Music played a powerful role in reshaping identity, particularly through the growth of Latino influence in the mid-1990s. Artists like Selena, Gloria Estefan, and later Ricky Martin and Marc Anthony introduced wider audiences to Spanish-language music. Crossover hits filled radio airwaves, while Latino rhythms influenced mainstream pop. The growth of Latino music was more than entertainment. It was a declaration of cultural presence in America. Festivals celebrated Latin heritage, and record companies recognized a booming market. For many second-generation Latino Americans, this era provided a soundtrack that affirmed their dual identity. 1990s feminist movements in pop culture. Feminism also found a new stage in the 1990s, particularly within pop culture. Musicians like Alanis Morissette, Madonna, and later the Spice Girls championed female empowerment through lyrics and persona. Television shows such as Buffy the Vampire Slayer presented strong female leads who broke stereotypes. Meanwhile, academic feminism engaged with issues of representation, language, and workplace equality. Girl power became both a marketing slogan and a cultural mantra. While debates about the depth of such movements persisted, the visibility of feminism in entertainment helped shape generational attitudes toward gender. 1999, American identity and globalization. By the end of the decade, globalization had become a defining factor in American identity. The internet connected people across borders, multinational corporations expanded influence, and cultural exports like Hollywood films and fast food spread worldwide. For Americans, this meant grappling with both pride and anxiety. On one hand, the US was at the center of global culture. On the other, questions emerged about homogenization and cultural loss. The debates over trade agreements like NAFTA and the protests against the World Trade Organization highlighted tensions between local identity and global integration. In 1999, America stood both as a leader and as a participant in an increasingly interconnected world. Nostalgia and leisure. 1990s shopping channel popularity. As the decade unfolded, leisure often mixed with consumption. Shopping channels like QVC and the Home Shopping Network gained widespread popularity. For many, late-night television became an opportunity to purchase jewelry, kitchen gadgets, and collectibles with just a phone call. The ease of shop from home appealed to suburban families and busy professionals alike. Shopping channels also pioneered techniques that foreshadowed internet retail live demonstrations, limited-time deals, and direct-to-consumer delivery. 1994, Home Shopping Network growth. By 1994, the Home Shopping Network, HSN, had become a cultural fixture. Its hosts were familiar faces, and its products entered countless households. HSN symbolized a broader shift in consumer behavior. convenience and novelty mattered as much as quality. While some mocked the cheesy presentations, others found genuine community in the shared excitement of live shopping. The growth of HSN also reflected the larger 1990s theme of blurred lines between leisure and commerce. 87. 1996. Roller rinks and arcades. The mid-1990s also carried forward older forms of leisure, such as roller rinks and arcades. Teenagers flocked to rinks on weekends, skating under disco balls to the latest pop hits. Arcades offered a mix of classic pinball and newer video games like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter II. For many young people, these spaces were more than entertainment. They were social hubs, places to meet friends, flirt, and establish independence. The roller rink and arcade scene embodied 1990s youth culture, balancing nostalgia with new trends. 88. 1997. Mall food court culture. By 1997, malls were at their cultural peak, and food courts played a central role. Gathering with friends over pizza slices, pretzels, or Chinese takeout was a ritual for teens and families alike. Food courts weren't just about eating, they were stages for people watching, socializing, and exploring independence. The mall became a symbol of 1990s leisure, blending consumerism, fashion, and community. In movies and TV shows, mall culture was often depicted as quintessentially suburban, highlighting both its comforts and cliches. 89. 1999. Millennium parties planned. As the decade neared its end, nostalgia collided with anticipation. The approach of the year 2000 inspired elaborate millennium parties. Families planned themed events with sparkling decorations, countdown clocks, and Y2K jokes. Hotels and nightclubs advertised all-night celebrations, while television networks prepared for global broadcasts of midnight celebrations across time zones. The energy of these parties reflected both excitement and anxiety, the thrill of entering a new millennium alongside fears about computer crashes and uncertainty about the future. For many, the final hours of 1999 were unforgettable, symbolizing both an ending and a beginning. Wrapping up the decade. 90. 1990s rise of cell phones as luxury items. Cell phones, once bulky and rare, became increasingly visible in the 1990s. Though still expensive, they symbolized success and modernity. Business people were often portrayed in media carrying sleek phones, while teenagers dreamed of someday affording one. By the end of the decade, flip phones were on the horizon, and cellular service was expanding rapidly. The rise of cell phones marked a shift in how people imagined communication, no longer tied to the home or office, but mobile and personal. 91. 1990s cable TV channel expansion. Another defining feature of the decade was the explosion of cable TV, channels dedicated to specific interests. MTV, Nickelodeon, CNN, Discovery, Cartoon Network offered unprecedented choice. This expansion transformed entertainment into a more personalized experience. Families no longer had to settle for the same 3 networks. Children could immerse themselves in cartoons, while parents tuned into 24-hour news. The diversification of cable mirrored the broader cultural trend toward variety and specialization. 92. 1990s comic book collecting boom. The 1990s also witnessed a boom in comic book collecting. Characters like Batman, Spider-Man, and the X-Men captured renewed attention through both comics and animated series. Collectors speculated on issues as investments, driving up sales and fueling a speculative bubble. Comic book shops became community spaces, where fans debated storylines and traded issues. While the bubble eventually burst, the 1990s solidified comics as both a mainstream and niche passion, setting the stage for the superhero dominance of the 2000s. 93. 1990s internet chat rooms and AOL Instant Messenger. Perhaps no development defined the late 1990s more than the internet. Chat rooms, forums, and AOL Instant Messenger created new ways of connecting. Teenagers spent hours crafting screen names, chatting with friends, or meeting strangers online. The novelty of instant digital communication was thrilling and sometimes intimidating. For many, their first experiences with romance, friendship, or identity experimentation occurred in chat rooms. AOL's iconic "You've Got Mail" notification became an auditory symbol of the digital age dawning. 94. 1999. Countdown to the year 2000. The decade concluded with a dramatic countdown. The world awaited the year 2000. Media coverage of Y2K fears highlighted potential computer meltdowns, while ordinary people stockpiled bottled water and batteries. Yet, the transition was largely smooth, and the relief was celebrated with fireworks, music, and televised spectacles from around the globe. The countdown to 2000 was not just about numbers, it symbolized humanity's entry into a new era. For Americans, it was both the end of the 1990s and the start of a new chapter, defined by technology, globalization, and possibility. In January of 1990, a yellow family from Springfield walked into American living rooms and never left. The Simpsons, which had started as short animated sketches on The Tracy Ullman Show, became a full half-hour sitcom on the Fox network. Its style was unusual at the time. Animated comedy for adults, filled with sharp humor, cultural references, and subtle satire of American life. Homer, Marge, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie quickly became household names, with Bart's "Eat My Shorts" catchphrase appearing on lunchboxes, t-shirts, and even schoolyard jokes. The series found an audience that crossed age groups, with children enjoying the slapstick humor, while adults recognized the clever nods to politics, pop culture, and everyday struggles. By the mid-1990s, The Simpsons had grown into a cultural landmark, spawning video games, albums, and countless toys. In many homes, Sunday night meant pizza and The Simpsons before school the next morning. The show also opened doors for other adult animation to thrive, setting the stage for South Park and Family Guy later in the decade. Even today, The Simpsons remains on air, but in the 1990s, it was more than just a cartoon. It was a cultural event that helped define what television humor could be. 2. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles mania sweeps America. The early 1990s belonged to four pizza-loving turtles who lived in the sewers of New York City. Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael had been around since the 1980s, but by the turn of the new decade, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had become a full-blown craze. The Saturday morning cartoon was enormously popular, blending martial arts action with goofy humor that kids adored. Action figures flew off toy shelves, with children collecting not only the turtles but their many villains, allies, and unusual vehicles. Lunchboxes, backpacks, and pajamas carried their green faces into schools across the country. In 1990, the first live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie premiered, and it became one of the highest-grossing independent films of its time. The sequels kept the energy alive, though the appeal was strongest in the first half of the decade. Fast food tie-ins, arcade games, and comic books added to the frenzy. Many children could be seen wearing turtle masks at Halloween or singing the famous theme song. The franchise represented more than just entertainment. It was part of the shared childhood identity of the early 90s. For many who grew up in that era, the phrase "cowabunga" still instantly recalls afternoons spent imagining battles with Shredder and the Foot Clan. 3. The rise of Nickelodeon and Saturday morning cartoons. During the 1990s, television for children entered a golden age, with Nickelodeon at the center of it all. Known as Nick to its fans, the network offered a mix of animated and live-action shows that defined the decade for young viewers. Cartoons like Rugrats, Doug, and Hey Arnold introduced quirky characters and imaginative stories, while live-action hits like Clarissa Explains It All and Are You Afraid of the Dark gave kids something relatable and exciting. Nickelodeon wasn't just about shows, it created a culture. Its bright orange branding, slime-filled game shows like Double Dare, and the summer event Nickelodeon Studios Live turned it into more than a channel. It was an identity. Saturday mornings were still filled with classics on network television: Animaniacs, Batman, the animated series, and X-Men. But Nickelodeon's programming ran throughout the day, making it a constant presence in households with cable. The Nicktoons lineup, which launched in 1991, became especially beloved, as it gave kids original, edgy content, unlike the reruns of older cartoons they had been used to. Parents appreciated that Nickelodeon catered to children without being overly polished, while kids felt like the network belonged to them alone. For many who grew up in the 1990s, Nickelodeon's shows remain nostalgic touchstones, tied closely to afternoons after school, long summer breaks, and laughter shared with friends. 4. Blockbuster Video at its peak Friday night rentals. In the 1990s, few weekend rituals were as universal as a trip to Blockbuster Video. With its signature blue and yellow signs, the chain became a gathering place for families and friends deciding what to watch on Friday night. The experience was as memorable as the movies themselves. The rows of VHS tapes lined up neatly, the sound of cases clicking shut, and the slightly sweet smell of popcorn often sold near the counter. Renting a movie felt special in a way streaming never quite replicates. Children ran to the animated section, parents debated new releases, and teenagers browsed comedies or horror titles, imagining which film would impress their friends. Blockbuster also carried video games, which added to its role as a hub for entertainment. Late fees were infamous. Forgetting to return a tape could add a surprising charge to your account, but that was part of the culture too. By the mid-1990s, Blockbuster had thousands of stores across the United States, and it became a shared cultural reference point. People still remember walking the aisles, flipping boxes over to read the summaries, and hoping the last copy wasn't already taken. Before streaming libraries and on-demand menus, the Blockbuster visit was itself part of the evening's entertainment. 5. Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls dominate the NBA. The 1990s belong to basketball's most recognizable figure, Michael Jordan. With his unmatched skill, competitive drive, and ability to deliver in crucial moments, Jordan became more than an athlete. He became a cultural icon. Playing for the Chicago Bulls, he led the team to 6 NBA championships during the decade, completing 2 separate three-peat runs. His highlight reels, from soaring slam dunks to game-winning jump shots, were broadcast on televisions across America. Children wore his number 23 jersey proudly, while fans lined up for Air Jordan sneakers that became both sportswear and fashion statements. Beyond the court, Jordan appeared in commercials, most famously alongside Bugs Bunny, in a partnership with Nike that eventually led to Space Jam in 1996. His influence extended into music, advertising, and global culture, as the NBA gained a wider international following with Jordan at the forefront. For many, the Bulls' dominance was not just about winning games, but about a sense of excitement every season. People tuned in, knowing they were witnessing greatness. In the 1990s, Michael Jordan represented excellence, ambition, and the power of sports to inspire across generations. Even today, highlights from that era remain iconic, tied to the energy of the decade itself. 6. Titanic, 1997, becomes the highest-grossing movie of the decade. When Titanic premiered in December of 1997, audiences were captivated. Directed by James Cameron, the film combined sweeping romance with dramatic historical tragedy, telling the story of the ill-fated ship through the fictional love affair of Jack Dawson and Rose DeWitt Bukater. Its visual effects, especially the massive recreation of the Titanic itself, amazed viewers, while its emotional depth drew people back to theaters multiple times. The film ran for over 3 hours, yet audiences filled cinemas week after week, making it the highest-grossing movie not just of the 1990s but of all time until years later. Celine Dion's song My Heart Will Go On became inseparable from the film, echoing on radios, at dances, and in living rooms everywhere. Teenagers memorized dialogue, couples saw the film together, and schools discussed the history of the actual ship with renewed interest. By early 1998, Titanic had crossed the $1 billion mark in ticket sales, a figure unheard of at the time. Its blend of historical drama, special effects, and emotional storytelling made it an event as much as a film. For many, the memory of seeing Titanic in theaters remains a defining cultural moment of the decade. 7. Friends captures a generation starting in 1994. When Friends first aired on NBC in September 1994, it introduced 6 20-somethings living in New York City, whose everyday ups and downs quickly became must-watch television. Monica, Chandler, Rachel, Ross, Joey, and Phoebe gathered around a purple-walled apartment and a cozy coffee house called Central Perk, creating a world that felt both aspirational and relatable. The humor was light, the friendships warm, and the storylines balanced between romance and comedy. For many viewers, the show offered a glimpse into young adult life in the 1990s, dating mishaps, career changes, and the importance of chosen family. Hairstyles, especially Jennifer Aniston's famous Rachel cut, influenced real-world fashion, while catchphrases like, "How you doin'?" made their way into casual conversation. The show became part of weekly routines, with millions tuning in Thursday nights for a mix of laughter and familiarity. Unlike many sitcoms before it, Friends grew into an international hit, appealing across cultures while remaining rooted in its New York setting. By the late 1990s, it was one of the most popular series in the world, shaping television comedy for years to come. For those who grew up during the decade, Friends was more than a show. It was a shared experience that carried the comfort of laughter and connection. 8. MTV's TRL shapes music, tastes of teens. In 1998, Total Request Live, known simply as TRL, premiered on MTV and quickly became a cultural phenomenon. Hosted by Carson Daly, the show aired live from Times Square, counting down the most requested music videos of the day. Teenagers tuned in after school, calling in to vote for their favorite songs and waiting to see which artists would top the daily chart. Pop stars like Britney Spears, NSYNC, and Backstreet Boys battled for the #1 spot, while rock and hip-hop artists also found their way into the mix. The show wasn't just about music videos. It became a gathering point for fans, with hundreds crowding the streets outside MTV's windows, waving signs and hoping to catch a glimpse of their idols. Interviews, surprise performances, and live appearances made TRL feel like a direct line between celebrities and their audience. For a generation before social media, it was one of the few ways fans could see their favorite stars live, unfiltered and interactive. The countdown format gave teenagers a sense of control over what was popular, fueling excitement and conversation in schools the next day. TRL captured the spirit of late 1990s pop culture, fast-moving, energetic, and deeply tied to the music that defined teenage life. 9. Disney's Renaissance films like The Lion King. The 1990s were a golden period for Walt Disney Animation, often called the Disney Renaissance. Beginning with The Little Mermaid in 1989 and continuing into the 1990s, the studio released a string of animated classics that defined childhood for an entire generation. Films like Beauty and the Beast, 1991, Aladdin, 1992, and The Lion King, 1994, combined memorable storytelling, unforgettable songs, and groundbreaking animation. The Lion King in particular became a global phenomenon, with its opening sequence, Circle of Life, instantly iconic. Children collected toys from fast food tie-ins, listened to soundtrack albums on cassette and CD, and re-watched the VHS tapes endlessly at home. The films often carried themes of courage, love, and self-discovery, appealing to both children and adults. Disney's success extended beyond theaters, as Broadway adaptations and merchandise filled homes and classrooms. Parents who had grown up with earlier Disney films found joy in sharing new ones with their children, creating a sense of continuity between generations. For many, the 1990s Disney movies weren't just entertainment. They were emotional touchstones tied to childhood memories, family outings, and favorite songs sung long after the credits rolled. 10. The rise of Pokémon near decade's end. By the late 1990s, a new cultural wave arrived from Japan, Pokémonday. What began as a pair of Game Boy video games quickly expanded into trading cards, an animated television series, movies, toys, and endless merchandise. Children across America memorized the names of the creatures, from Pikachu to Charizard, and traded cards in schoolyards with intense enthusiasm. The slogan, "Gotta catch 'em all," captured the spirit of the craze, encouraging kids to collect every character and complete their sets. The Pokémon cartoon aired on weekday mornings, introducing children to Ash, Misty, and Brock as they traveled through fantastical worlds filled with battles and friendship. When Pokémon the first movie premiered in 1999, theaters filled with young fans clutching limited edition cards handed out at the door. Pokémon wasn't just entertainment, it was a shared cultural experience that brought kids together in play, discussion, and imagination. Parents watched as their children poured energy into the franchise, trading strategies and proudly showing off their collections. By the turn of the millennium, Pokémon had grown into one of the most successful entertainment brands in the world. But in the late 1990s it felt new, exciting, and boundless. For many, those early years remained the most magical. Gas averaged $1.15 per gallon in 1990. In 1990, gas prices were just $1.15 per gallon on average, a figure that now feels almost unbelievable. For families and commuters, this meant road trips were affordable, and daily driving didn't drain the wallet. Many Americans still drove large sedans and SUVs, with fuel efficiency not yet a major selling point. Cheap gas also meant teenagers with part-time jobs could afford the freedom of cruising with friends, filling up for just a few dollars. Stations often offered promotions like free maps or discounted car washes, adding to the sense that fueling up was an easy, casual part of life. Long weekend drives to the beach or countryside were common, and the road trip culture thrived. While prices did fluctuate through the decade, the early 1990s remained a time when the cost of gas rarely made headlines. Compared to today's numbers, it serves as a reminder of how much both the economy and automotive culture have shifted. A movie ticket cost about $4. Going to the movies in the 1990s was not only a cultural ritual, but also an affordable night out. In 1990, the average movie ticket was just about $4. For many, this meant families could attend weekend matinees together, while teenagers flocked to theaters for Friday night premieres. Popcorn, soda, and candy were often pricier than the ticket itself, but the experience of sitting in a packed theater, waiting for the lights to dim, was priceless. Popular blockbusters like Jurassic Park, Titanic, and Disney's animated hits drew massive crowds, with lines wrapping around buildings. Unlike today, where streaming dominates, the theater was the first and often only way to experience new releases. Many cinemas also offered discount days, student deals, and double features, making it easy for young people to spend hours immersed in films. At $4 a ticket, it wasn't unusual to watch the same movie multiple times on the big screen. McDonald's Happy Meals under $2. In the 1990s, McDonald's Happy Meals were more than just a meal, they were an experience. Priced under $2, they were affordable treats that parents could buy without hesitation. Kids eagerly anticipated not just the small burger, fries, and drink, but the toy tucked inside the iconic red box. The toys often tied into popular movies, TV shows, or toy lines, making them highly collectible. Disney tie-ins like The Lion King or Aladdin brought figurines that children traded at school, while Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Hot Wheels toys often turned Happy Meal boxes into prized possessions. For families, grabbing a couple of Happy Meals was an easy way to make a Saturday outing feel special. Drive-thrus were busier than ever, and commercials marketed the meals as a mix of fun and value. Parents loved the price, while kids loved the magic of food plus toy. Looking back, Happy Meals under $2 feel like a symbol of a simpler era, when fast food was affordable entertainment, not just convenience. Payphones on every corner. Before cell phones, the payphone was a lifeline. In the early 1990s, it seemed like every gas station, shopping mall, street corner, and airport had a row of payphones. A handful of quarters could keep someone connected, whether it was calling a parent for a ride, checking in on plans with friends, or making an emergency call. Teenagers especially relied on them when hanging out at malls or arcades, dialing home collect, or memorizing phone numbers on scraps of paper. Companies like 1-800-COLLECT advertised heavily, offering cheaper ways to place long-distance calls. For travelers, payphones were essential. Airports, bus stations, and roadside rest stops all had booths ready. The sight of glass booths or metal phone banks, often covered in stickers or graffiti, was a standard part of the urban landscape. By the end of the decade, as cell phones gained traction, payphones started disappearing, but in the 1990s, they were still the backbone of public communication. Shopping malls as teenage hangouts. In the 1990s, the shopping mall wasn't just for shopping, it was a cultural hub, especially for teenagers. With sprawling food courts, endless clothing stores, arcades, and music shops, malls became weekend gathering places. Teens would wander through places like Sam Goody, browsing CDs, or hit up stores like Gap, Limited Too, or Hot Topic. Hanging out at the mall was as much about socializing as it was about buying anything. Groups of friends would grab pizza slices in the food court, sit on benches, people watching, or spend hours at the arcade feeding quarters into Street Fighter II and Mortal Kombat. Parents often dropped their kids off, knowing the mall felt safe and structured. Movies like Clueless and TV shows like Saved by the Bell captured this mall culture perfectly. Teenagers in groups, gossiping, flirting, and trying on the latest fashions. For many, the mall was a first taste of independence, a place where allowances could be spent freely and friendships were cemented. CD players and Walkmans in backpacks. In the 1990s, portable music was a defining part of youth culture. For many, this meant a trusty Sony Walkman, or later, a Discman, tucked into a backpack. Cassette tapes were still widely used in the early part of the decade, but CDs quickly took over, promising clearer sound and a futuristic feel. Teenagers carried their favorite albums everywhere, flipping through CD booklets filled with lyrics and artwork. It wasn't just about listening, owning a collection of CDs was a statement of identity. Genres like grunge, hip-hop, pop, and alternative exploded, and Walkmans made it possible to bring those sounds to the school bus, the park, or long car rides. The downside was the notorious skip problem: one wrong move, and your Discman would stutter through a song if you bumped it. Still, nothing felt cooler than pulling out headphones, pressing play, and tuning out the world. These players made music personal and portable, laying the groundwork for the iPod and streaming culture that came later. Paper maps, still essential for road trips. Before smartphones and GPS, the humble paper map was indispensable. Every car glove box in the 1990s seemed to hold a folded map of the local state or a Rand McNally Road atlas. Family vacations started with parents spreading maps across the kitchen table, tracing routes with highlighters, and planning gas and food stops. On the road, someone would unfold the enormous paper, trying to refold it correctly after each use, a skill few mastered. Maps gave a sense of discovery, but also brought stress. One wrong turn could mean getting lost until the next highway sign appeared. Still, they made road trips feel adventurous, with children in the back seat pointing out cities or tracing the route with their fingers. Gas stations often sold regional maps, sometimes with advertisements on the back for local diners or motels. Looking back, maps symbolized both freedom and uncertainty, representing an era when navigation relied on patience, attention, and maybe a little luck. Blockbuster late fees. Dreaded by renters, Friday nights in the 1990s often meant a trip to Blockbuster Video. The ritual was simple. Families or friends would stroll through aisles of VHS tapes, debating over action, comedy, or horror. Renting was inexpensive, a few dollars per tape, but the real catch was the dreaded late fee. Forget to rewind your tape or return it on time, and Blockbuster charged penalties that quickly piled up. Everyone knew the sinking feeling of finding a forgotten rental under the TV and rushing to return it before closing. Despite the stress, the experience was magical. The smell of popcorn, rows of new releases, and the thrill of spotting the last copy of a popular movie created a sense of event. For teenagers, renting a stack of comedies or horror flicks for sleepovers was a weekend tradition. Though late fees became infamous, they were part of the Blockbuster culture, a small price to pay for movie nights that defined an entire decade. Fashion catalogs. Like Delia's popular with teens, long before online shopping, catalogs were a teen fashion bible. Companies like Delia's, Alloy, and J. Crew sent thick booklets to mailboxes across America, filled with glossy photos of the latest styles. For teenage girls in particular, Delia's was iconic. Its quirky, colorful clothes and bold accessories captured 90s youth culture: chunky shoes, spaghetti strap tops, chokers, and wide-leg pants. Teens circled items they wanted, dog-eared pages, and dreamed of placing orders over the phone. Catalog shopping felt futuristic. You called a number, read out product codes, and waited weeks for a package to arrive. Even those who couldn't afford to buy loved flipping through catalogs for inspiration. Magazines like 17 and catalogs like Delia's shaped trends in a way social media does today. They were more than shopping tools. They were lifestyle guides, offering a glimpse into the fashion world teens aspired to join. For many, the arrival of a new catalog in the mail was as exciting as getting a new magazine issue. Beepers and pagers, common before cell phones. Before cell phones became mainstream, beepers and pagers were the ultimate status symbol. Doctors, business professionals, and even teenagers carried them clipped to belts or tucked into pockets. The small devices would buzz or beep with a phone number, prompting the user to find a payphone and return the call. For adults, pagers were practical, a way to stay reachable for urgent work calls. For teens, they were a social tool, used to send coded messages like 143, I love you, or 911, call me now. Owning a pager suggested importance, responsibility, or coolness. Some models even came in translucent neon colors, making them fashionable accessories. Though limited in function, beepers played a huge role in bridging the communication gap between landlines and the coming wave of cell phones. By the late 1990s, as mobile phones became more affordable, pagers started fading. But for much of the decade, that little buzz on your hip meant you were connected in the 90s way. 1994 Olympics. Nancy Kerrigan and Tonya Harding saga. The 1994 Winter Olympics in Lillehammer became unforgettable, not just for athletic achievements, but for the drama surrounding American figure skaters Nancy Kerrigan and Tonya Harding. Weeks before the Games, Kerrigan was attacked at a Detroit practice session, famously crying, "Why me?" as cameras captured the aftermath. The investigation revealed links between the assault and Harding's ex-husband, throwing the skating world into chaos. The story became a national obsession, dominating headlines and late-night comedy. At the Olympics, Kerrigan made a remarkable comeback, skating with elegance and earning a silver medal, while Harding finished 8th after a broken lace disrupted her routine. The scandal highlighted the pressures of fame, ambition, and the media's hunger for spectacle. For many Americans, the saga represented both the dark side of competitive sports and the resilience of athletes under pressure. To this day, the Harding-Kerrigan drama remains one of the most notorious scandals in Olympic history. A blend of athleticism, personal rivalry, and tabloid sensationalism that captivated a global audience. The 1992 Dream Team at Barcelona Olympics. The 1992 Summer Olympics in Barcelona marked a turning point in basketball and global sports culture with the debut of the U.S. Dream Team. For the first time, professional NBA players were allowed to compete, assembling what is widely regarded as the greatest basketball roster ever. Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Charles Barkley, and a lineup of legends. Their dominance was absolute, beating opponents by margins of 40 or more points, yet their presence transcended the court. The Dream Team became cultural ambassadors, showing the world the excitement of NBA basketball. Young international players, like a teenage Pau Gasol and Dirk Nowitzki, were inspired to pursue the game more seriously, fueling the globalization of basketball. Off the court, the Dream Team's personalities made them pop culture icons, with their practices drawing as much attention as games. Their gold medal seemed inevitable, but their real legacy was transforming basketball into a worldwide phenomenon, setting the stage for the international stars who would define the NBA in decades to come. Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa's 1998 home run chase. The summer of 1998 revitalized Major League Baseball with one of the most exciting chases in sports history. Mark McGwire of the St. Louis Cardinals and Sammy Sosa of the Chicago Cubs, competing to break Roger Maris's single-season home run record of 61, set in 1961. Every game became must-watch television as fans tracked their towering shots. McGwire ultimately finished with 70 home runs, while Sosa hit 66, both shattering Maris's mark. Their friendly rivalry united fans, even across team loyalties, as crowds cheered both sluggers. For a sport recovering from the damaging 1994 players' strike, the chase was a moment of redemption, bringing fans back to ballparks and televisions. McGwire and Sosa were celebrated as heroes, appearing on magazine covers and dominating sports talk. In later years, revelations about performance-enhancing drugs cast a shadow on their achievements, leading to debates about legacy and integrity in baseball. Yet in 1998, the home run chase captured America's imagination, like few sporting events ever had, reminding people of baseball's timeless power to thrill. Dallas Cowboys dominate NFL in the mid-90s. The Dallas Cowboys cemented their reputation as America's team in the 1990s, particularly under the leadership of coach Jimmy Johnson and later Barry Switzer. With stars like Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, and Michael Irvin, the Cowboys built a dynasty that won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years: 1993, 1994, 1996. Their dominance wasn't just on the field, it extended to pop culture, as the Cowboys' cheerleaders, Jerry Jones's aggressive ownership style, and the team's massive TV presence made them a brand as much as a football team. Their mix of flash and grit embodied the 90s NFL era, when television contracts and rising player salaries were changing the game. The Cowboys' rivalries with teams like the San Francisco 49ers provided some of the decade's most memorable games, showcasing power football and big personalities. For many fans, the Cowboys of the 90s defined professional football's golden age, glamorous, powerful, and larger than life. Their success cemented their place in sports history and expanded the NFL's cultural footprint across America. Tiger Woods emerges as golf's new star. In 1997, a 21-year-old Tiger Woods burst onto the sports world by winning the Masters tournament in historic fashion. With his flawless play, Woods set a new scoring record and won by a stunning 12 strokes, instantly becoming a household name. His rise was more than a sports story, it was a cultural phenomenon. Woods brought a new level of athleticism and intensity to golf, attracting younger audiences to a sport often seen as traditional and exclusive. His presence also challenged the game's demographics, inspiring players of diverse backgrounds. Sponsorship deals poured in, with Nike and other brands turning Woods into one of the most recognizable athletes in the world. Over the next few years, his dominance only grew, reshaping how golf was played and covered. Woods' combination of skill, charisma, and focus made him the face of a new era, transforming golf into a mainstream television draw. His rise in the 1990s marked the beginning of one of the greatest careers in sports history, Michael Jordan's 1996 return. After shocking the world by retiring from basketball in 1993 to pursue a baseball career, Michael Jordan made his triumphant NBA return in March 1995 with two simple words: "I'm back." By the 1995-96 season, Jordan was fully restored to his legendary form, leading the Chicago Bulls to a then-record 72 wins and 10 losses regular season and an NBA championship. The return wasn't just about stats. It was about the story. Fans worldwide were captivated by Jordan's relentless drive, his ability to dominate after time away, and the renewed Bulls dynasty alongside Scottie Pippen and new addition Dennis Rodman. The season helped redefine professional basketball's global appeal. With Jordan as the face of the sport, his return symbolized perseverance, excellence, and the power of competitive spirit. Jordan's 1996 season remains iconic not only for its records but also for restoring the Bulls dynasty, cementing his status as the greatest player of all time in the eyes of many. New sports stadiums defined cities. The 1990s saw a wave of new sports stadiums across America, reshaping urban landscapes and redefining fan experiences. Cities invested heavily in multi-million-dollar arenas and ballparks, often blending modern amenities with nostalgic design. Camden Yards in Baltimore, opened in 1992, set the trend with its retro brick facade and fan-friendly layout, inspiring a new generation of retro-modern ballparks. Other cities followed, from Denver's Coors Field to Cleveland's Jacobs Field, each aiming to create civic pride and boost local economies. These stadiums weren't just sports venues, they became cultural landmarks, drawing tourists and shaping city identities. Critics pointed to the high costs often borne by taxpayers, sparking debates over public funding for private franchises. Still, the 90s stadium boom reflected America's deep connection to sports as a communal experience. Whether cheering at a baseball game under new lights or attending an NFL contest in massive arenas, fans felt the evolution of sports as more than competition. It was entertainment, business, and civic pride, all rolled into one. Women's soccer team wins 1999 World Cup. One of the defining moments of 1990s American sports came on July 10, 1999, when the U.S. women's national team defeated China in a penalty shootout to win the FIFA Women's World Cup. Played before 90,000 fans at the Rose Bowl and watched by millions worldwide, the game became a watershed for women's sports. Brandi Chastain's iconic celebration ripping off her jersey after scoring the winning penalty became an image of empowerment and athletic triumph. Players like Mia Hamm, Julie Foudy, and Christine Lilly became household names, inspiring a generation of young girls to pursue soccer. The victory solidified women's soccer as a force in the U.S. and showcased the potential of women's sports on a global stage. The team's success helped lead to the creation of professional women's leagues in the U.S. and boosted investment in youth programs. The 1999 World Cup win was more than a championship. It was a cultural shift, showing that women's sports could command the spotlight and capture the nation's heart. Rollerblading boom across suburbs. In the 1990s, rollerblading exploded as one of the decade's most popular recreational activities. Suburban streets, parks, and boardwalks were filled with kids and teenagers gliding on inline skates, often paired with neon helmets and elbow pads. The sport blended fitness with fun, serving as both a pastime and a form of transportation. Inline skating gained momentum from its association with extreme sports culture, with competitions and stunt performances bringing it mainstream recognition. Roller hockey leagues sprang up across neighborhoods, and skating became a social activity, much like biking in earlier generations. Advertisements and movies portrayed rollerblading as youthful, cool, and adventurous, cementing its place in 90s pop culture. While its popularity faded in the 2000s, rollerblading in the 90s symbolized suburban freedom, afternoons spent outside, and the decade's love of trends that combined sport with style. For many, the sound of wheels on pavement remains a nostalgic reminder of carefree 90s summers. Air Jordans become a style icon. Few athletic shoes have achieved the cultural impact of Air Jordans in the 1990s. Originally launched in the 1980s, The sneaker line exploded in popularity during Michael Jordan's dominance in the NBA, evolving from sports gear into a fashion statement. By the mid-90s, Jordans weren't just basketball shoes, they were status symbols. Kids begged parents for the latest releases, while collectors began lining up for new drops. Music videos, rap lyrics, and street fashion elevated the shoes into icons of style and identity. Wearing Air Jordans became a way of connecting to Jordan's greatness, his competitive fire, and the glamour of NBA culture. The shoes also played a role in discussions about consumerism and youth culture, sometimes even leading to controversies over their high price and demand. Yet the allure of Air Jordans never faded. In the 1990s, they defined the intersection of sports, fashion, and identity, leaving a legacy that still thrives in sneaker culture today. 1. Hubble Space Telescope launches in 1990. When the Hubble Space Telescope was launched aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery in April 1990, it promised to revolutionize humanity's view of the universe. Named after astronomer Edwin Hubble, the telescope was designed to peer into deep space without the distortion of Earth's atmosphere. Early on, a flawed mirror caused blurred images, leading to public disappointment. Yet, after corrective optics were installed in 1993, Hubble fulfilled its mission, sending back images of breathtaking clarity. From the pillars of creation to glimpses of galaxies billions of light-years away, Hubble helped answer fundamental questions about the cosmos. It proved the universe is expanding faster than once believed and brought cosmic phenomena into the public imagination, shaping astronomy for decades to come. 2. First cloned sheep, Dolly, in 1996. In July 1996, a sheep named Dolly was born in Scotland, the world's first mammal cloned from an adult cell. Scientists at the Roslin Institute achieved this through nuclear transfer, using DNA from an adult sheep's udder cell. Dolly's arrival shocked the world, raising hopes of medical breakthroughs but also sparking fierce ethical debates about cloning's potential misuse. For some, Dolly represented a future where organ regeneration or genetic therapies might save lives. For others, it triggered fears of designer babies or human cloning. Although Dolly lived only 6 years, her existence proved cloning was possible, altering the course of genetic science and opening new avenues in stem cell research. 3. Human Genome Project begins. Launched in 1990, the Human Genome Project was one of the most ambitious scientific collaborations in history. Its goal, to map the complete set of human genes. Spanning more than a decade, the project united researchers from around the globe, with US labs playing a central role. As sequencing technology improved, the project made faster progress, and by the end of the 1990s, researchers were already decoding vast sections of the genome. The implications were staggering, unlocking knowledge about inherited diseases, genetic mutations, and potential cures. Beyond medicine, it raised philosophical questions about identity, free will, and human diversity. The 1990s laid the groundwork for genetic science that continues shaping medicine today. 4. Mars Pathfinder lands in 1997. On July 4, 1997, NASA's Mars Pathfinder mission successfully landed on the Red Planet, delivering the Sojourner rover. It was the first wheeled vehicle to roam Mars, capturing images and analyzing rocks and soil. The mission captivated the world. As the internet buzzed with daily updates, Pathfinder's website set traffic records. Costing only a fraction of earlier missions, it proved space exploration could be done efficiently. Pathfinder showed evidence that liquid water may have once flowed on Mars, renewing speculation about extraterrestrial life. Beyond its science, the mission reignited public enthusiasm for space exploration, inspiring a new generation of planetary scientists and engineers. 5. Advances in personal computers and microchips. The 1990s saw home computing explode in popularity, driven by advances in microchip technology. Intel's Pentium processors made PCs faster and more affordable, while companies like Microsoft and Apple battled for dominance in software and design. Computers moved from offices into living rooms and classrooms, reshaping how people worked, studied, and played. Video games surged with titles like Doom and Myst, while productivity tools transformed business. Microchips also powered smaller, smarter devices, laying foundations for laptops, mobile phones, and digital cameras. By decade's end, owning a computer became less of a luxury and more of a necessity, signaling the dawn of the digital era. 6. DVDs introduced mid-decade. By the mid-1990s, DVDs emerged as the next leap in home entertainment, replacing bulky VHS tapes. First released in Japan in 1996 and later worldwide, DVDs offered clearer video, crisper audio, and far more storage capacity. Movie lovers embraced the ability to skip scenes, access bonus features, and enjoy widescreen formats. Retailers quickly stocked DVD players, and rental stores adjusted their shelves for the new technology. Within a few years, VHS began its decline. More than just an upgrade, DVDs reflected the decade's broader digital transformation, as consumers demanded sharper, faster, and more interactive media experiences. 7. Advances in medical imaging. The 1990s witnessed breakthroughs in medical imaging, with MRI and CT scans becoming standard diagnostic tools. Improvements in resolution allowed doctors to detect diseases earlier and with greater accuracy, from cancerous tumors to neurological conditions. Imaging also expanded into functional MRI, fMRI, which revealed real-time brain activity, opening new doors in neuroscience. These advances changed treatment planning, guiding surgeons with unprecedented precision and reducing the need for invasive procedures. Hospitals worldwide invested heavily in imaging equipment, making it central to modern medicine. For patients, these technologies often meant faster diagnoses, earlier interventions, and better outcomes. 8. First web browser, Mosaic, in 1993. In 1993, the release of Mosaic transformed the internet from a niche academic tool into a user-friendly medium accessible to the public. Developed at the University of Illinois, Mosaic was the first browser to integrate text and images on the same page, making the World Wide Web visually engaging. Suddenly, ordinary users could navigate information with clicks instead of complex commands. Mosaic's popularity helped spark the dot-com boom, inspiring the creation of Netscape and Internet Explorer. It also launched a new digital culture. Businesses, media, and individuals rushed online, reshaping commerce and communication. The browser was a gateway that ushered in the modern internet age. 9. Y2K bug fears build toward decade's end. As the millennium approached, fear spread over the so-called Y2K bug. Early computer systems stored years using only 2 digits, meaning 2000 could be misread as 1900. Experts warned this could crash systems controlling banking, aviation, power grids, and government records. By the late 1990s, companies and governments worldwide spent billions updating software and hardware. Media hype painted scenarios of global blackouts and economic collapse. Yet when midnight struck on January 1st, 2000 disruptions were minimal proof that the massive preventative effort had worked. While some dismissed Y2K as overblown, it underscored society's growing dependence on computer systems. 10. Space shuttle missions continue exploration. Throughout the 1990s, NASA's Space Shuttle program carried astronauts and equipment into orbit, advancing both science and international cooperation. Shuttles deployed satellites, serviced the Hubble Space Telescope, and helped build the foundations of the International Space Station. Missions brought together astronauts from multiple countries, symbolizing post-Cold War collaboration in space. Tragedy from earlier decades still weighed heavily, but each successful mission restored confidence in human spaceflight. The program not only expanded scientific knowledge but also fueled public fascination with space, ensuring the shuttle remained an icon of exploration throughout the decade. The 1990s as a bridge. 95. 1990s Cultural Bridge Summary. The 1990s were a decade of bridges between environmental activism and technological solutions, between multicultural identity and globalization, between nostalgic leisure and digital innovation. It was a time when cell phones were luxury items, malls were cultural temples, and the internet was both a novelty and a revolution. Environmental consciousness became mainstream, cultural representation expanded, and leisure reflected both tradition and new consumer trends. 96. 1990s anticipation theme. Above all, the 1990s were about anticipation of solutions to environmental problems, anticipation of new forms of identity, anticipation of a digital age, and anticipation of a new millennium. Looking back, the decade feels like a pause before acceleration, a deep breath before the plunge into the 21st century. 97. 1990s tradition meets transformation. The 1990s blended tradition and transformation, a decade where the familiar met the fresh. Innovation reshaped daily life. Music gave voice to new generations. Fashion shifted with bold statements, and culture pulsed with both energy and reflection. Looking back, the 90s feel like a gentle bridge where old comforts remained, even as a new millennium beckoned with change. 98. 1990's technology and society balance. The decade demonstrated how technology and society could evolve together. From the World Wide Web becoming public to hybrid cars arriving on American roads, the 1990s showed that innovation didn't have to abandon human connection. Instead, it could enhance it, creating new ways for people to communicate, learn, and express themselves. 1990's youth culture legacy. The youth culture of the 1990s left an indelible mark on future generations. From grunge to hip-hop, from Pokemon to PlayStation, from mall culture to chat rooms, the experiences of 1990s youth shaped how subsequent generations would approach music, fashion, technology, and identity. The decade proved that young people weren't just consumers of culture, they were creators and definers of it. 100. 1990s. Final reflection. If you enjoyed this calm journey through the 1990s, join us next time as we explore fascinating facts from the 2000s. Each decade holds stories worth remembering, and we'd love to share them with you. Subscribe today and continue these soothing history journeys into the past and beyond.